Hi, I am Dave from Dave's Expert Auto here in Marshfield. Today we're going to be going over basically the steps that we do to do an oil change here at my shop. Just going to go over the basics, show you what I'll check when I do an oil change, when you should have your oil changed, how often you should have your oil changed, what viscosity oil we should use in here, whether it should be different from wintertime to summertime. Basically just a general idea of what all goes into an oil change nowadays. So first thing, we'll get the car up in the air. Now that we got the vehicle up in the air, we'll start by getting the oil draining. Okay, now that we got the oil draining on this car, we'll let it drain for a little while. I like to try to get out as much as possible. Then let it drain, and so then we'll proceed to checking the tires. And we'll start by checking the tires. We're going to put in the right amount of PSI, of course, of air. And we're going to go around to the other three and do the same thing to all three of those. So we aired up all the tires. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to check the tread depth to make sure we don't need to rotate our tires. So we'll go ahead and we'll check that. About 9-30 seconds of tread up front. Have about 7-30 seconds in the rear, so they're good where they're at. While our oil is still draining out here yet, I want to go around and I check the suspension components. Make sure your tie rods and ball joints, wheel bearings, nothing has any play in them. So just kind of shake it back and forth here a little bit. Turn the wheel, make sure you don't have a brake caliper dragging or a brake dragging. That would be excessive force. Then we'd have to look, of course, into something like that. But it feels like everything's pretty tight there. And now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna just shine a light in and take a look at her brake pads. Make sure she's not gonna, go into the rotors anytime soon. Make sure she's got good brakes for the next 3,000 miles. So back here, we don't have any suspension parts that move or turn, but just want to make sure everything is in its place. Make sure nothing's falling off or breaking. Exhaust system's all up nice. Actually, it looks pretty new, so we shouldn't have to worry about that one. And the brakes look good all the way around. Again, I think we're going to have a happy car owner. Everything's looking good and in its place so far. Tighten that down a little bit, but don't over tighten. And we'll pull off the filter. It just collects all the contaminants and any debris or anything inside the motor. And that came off in a hurry. So we have our filter off. We're just gonna put it in to the waste oil container or drum and pretty much smash a hole in the top of it, let it drain out, and then we can also crush it down. Compacts it, gets all the oil out of it so we can throw it away. So all the oil that I collect here, I use during the winter to heat my shop. We're gonna grab a new filter for it and bring it over to the car. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna lube the O-ring a little bit. We're gonna make sure you do that because I know some places that don't. And if you don't do that, it really makes it a bear getting them back off. And then we're going to make sure that the gasket from the old filter is not still on the engine. And it's not. Make sure it's nice and clean. And then we're going to screw the new filter up there. Now that we have the filter all up there and tightened down and our drain plugs all tightened down, we checked everything. We're ready to let it down. So we're going to go and we're going to get the right viscosity oil. Most all your newer cars nowadays, it's all written on the cap. It says 5W30. Some of your newer ones will say Dexos. That's a certain kind of oil that you need to run. There's 520, 020. There's all kinds of different viscosities. Sometimes you have to use synthetic. So we'll go ahead and we'll put in some oil. Now that we have the oil cap on, we're going to start checking out a few other things. I always fill up the window wash container. When you live in Wisconsin, you need it all times of the year. Summer because of the bugs and winter because of the salt. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and check the air filter. And yeah, it looks pretty good yet. As long as we're over here, there's a serpentine belt that runs your alternator, air conditioning, water pump, all that kind of good stuff. We want to just check it for cracks. Belt looks pretty good. Brake fluid. Make sure there's still plenty in the reservoir, and there is, so we're good there. Now we want to check the antifreeze. Now you want to make sure the system's not under pressure. Sometimes when it's hot, they'll be under pressure, so you want to make sure that you let the pressure go. It doesn't billow out or something at you or spray at you. This one is not under pressure, so we're good. We're going to pull that off, and then we're going to get a checker to see how good the antifreeze is below zero. So we're going to put the antifreeze in this little thing called a refractometer, and it just works on light. I'm just going to look in here, and it says we're good for 45 below zero. Hopefully it doesn't get like that today. It's nice and sunny. So antifreeze is good. So what I do is I just, of course, it's nice and full. So that's a good thing. Just screw that cap back on, make sure it's tight, and we're just going to write on here what it's good for and the date. And oil change intervals. I'll be honest with you, still like the 3,000 mile oil change as far as semi-synthetic, 5,000 as far as full synthetic. I know, dealers and manufacturers are telling you can go 6,000, 8,000. Some I think are even pushing the 10,000 mile limit. I'm not a big lover of that. I'll just be honest, that's my personal opinion. Stuff I've seen, all our newer cars nowadays are turbocharged, they're supercharged, they got variable valve timing, all kinds of small orifices, they got screens in the variable valve timing solenoids. And what I've been seeing, and I know a lot of mechanics have been seeing, is sludge building up because of extended oil changes, dirt building up. We just changed that filter, but it doesn't collect everything. These really fine screens are mounted in the timing components, and the timing components themselves, they lock up, they get plugged. And I tell you what, I just did one earlier this week. It cost the guy $1,500 to fix because a check engine light was on because of a timing issue. It still ran, but it constantly set codes. So I guess I still recommend just changing more often. I know, like I said, oil is better too, but a couple more oil changes every 10,000, or an extra oil change every 10,000 miles, it's 30, 40 bucks. It cost them $1,500. The vehicle didn't even have 100,000 miles on it. So I guess you can do what you want, but I tell all my customers, just change your oil and you'll have a lot less problems. So we're going to go and fill out a sticker so we can put 3,000 miles. That's semi-synthetic that I used. We're going to put a 3,000 mile oil sticker in her car. So now we're just going to go ahead and fire the car up. Make sure our oil light goes off, and it did. And then as long as I'm in the car, I always just check the brights right away, make sure the lights work. And now this would be the time to check the transmission dipstick. This one does not have one, so we can't check it. But otherwise you check the transmission fluid, of course, with it running. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and check all the lights around the vehicle, make sure everything works. I guess we'll shut the vehicle off. Everything looks good underneath the hood. So we'll go and shut it off. And I'll pull out the hoist and wait for the oil to settle a little bit, so then I always double check the oil, make sure it's nice and full. So I got the hoist kicked out of the car, and we're just going to double check the oil, make sure it's nice and full. And it's nice and full, right to the top of the crosshatch pattern, right where we want to be. So put that back in, make sure we got our tools picked up. And we're gonna make sure she's down, ain't gonna come up at anybody. And then the last thing I check is the wipers. And looks like they work nice. Okay, so we're done with our oil change. Basically, these are all the things that if you bring your car here, that we do at an oil change and go through before your car leaves. So if you got any questions, just give me a call at Dave's Expert Auto, and I'd be happy to help you out. Thank you.